Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. It feels like a special episode, Don, because it's actually Friday and we're posting this on Friday unless some tech incident happens. But we're here. The market's also been moving, which is helpful. So it looks like all the stars have aligned for this episode. Before we get into it, as always, we're brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. If you're shopping around centralized exchanges, be sure to check them out via the links below, and specifically the transparency dashboard and execution dashboard. With any exchange or centralized crypto service, do not keep any more funds than necessary for your trading. That's the whole point of leverage, in order to reduce counterparty risk, or to put on a big fuck off position, as it's known 99% of the time. But the counterparty risk thing is cool too. So with that out of the way, Don, stuff has been moving. You've been trading. I've been posting selfies. It looks like, the market has progressed to a slightly more interesting state. Definitely doesn't apply to altcoins, as you made sure everyone knew via your Twitter tirade this morning. But let's get a bigger picture update as to where things are. We're halfway through this monthly. Does the monthly time frame interest you, or are you coping on lower time frames for the time being?
I'm coping on lower time frames. The monthly looks kind of shit, not gonna lie.
Oh no.
You look at the monthly time frame, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's still a little bit away from support. And we do have the resistance cluster ahead of us, basically at 27.2. No,
Yeah.
wait, what is it? Yeah, something like that. That's kind of what we've been getting rejected by, like close enough anyway. So the monthly not so great. It's not the worst, given it wasn't really coming from resistance, right? Like we didn't hit resistance. We haven't had support be hit either. So we're kind of in the middle of nowhere, which makes the monthly less interesting. I think there's not that much to do on the monthly time frame, which is a bummer. It's the best time frame, but it only works like once or twice a year, which is fair enough, right? Like if you get an almost 100% strike rate time frame, it's only fair that only comes around like 1 or 2 times a year.
Yeah, and then if you fuck it up like I did, then you're like, oh boy, well, guess I have to wait. But yeah, no, I agree with you there. There's a cost to pay for the accuracy of the high time frame, and that cost is time. And we've been diddling in the middle for pretty much half a year now, right? If we take the high conviction zones at the very least, it's been a while since monthly levels.
It feels like 16K was just 2 or 3 months ago, and it's been ages. But also when I think about it, it feels like it's been ages. It's a weird thing, right? Like where it feels like it's been so long, but also when I think back, I'm like, oh, this was just yesterday. So
yeah, and just yesterday, Don was talking about how it's over for the macro economy, and then just buys the BTC bottom. So that's a fun one too. The macro economy changed in a week.
It always does.
It always does. Yeah. Hopefully, people realize that's like a feature, not a bug, because I know you get memed on it a lot on Twitter for your trade management and bias shifting. But just consider for a moment what the alternative would look like, where I guess the alternative is never shifting bias, right? And being beholden to your views indefinitely, even if the evidence changes, which is
that's
by definition
that's
irrational. Yeah, or an idiot. Like one of those.
Yep.
Sometimes synonymous.
I like to kind of go from, like, I have strong views, but they're very loosely held. And that's kind of how I go about trading in general. Like, I don't see the point. Like, I'm sitting here and I see something bullish, and then I'm going to be like, this is the most bullish thing that's ever happened, right? Like, if I was thinking any different, like, I couldn't take a bet on it. And then it runs into trouble. I'm like, well, this is fucked.
That was fun.
And then that's that, and that's the trade, and it works for me. I know that it's a little bit weird looking from the outside. Like, I got a lot of people that were very angry with me for shilling 16K, because they were like, you shilled 16K, but your target was 100K, and now we're at 30K, and you're bearish. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, where's the problem, right? Like, I shilled the bottom. I sold the local top, which was 30K, 31K. I don't see the problem, but people are like, but you promised us 100K, and it's like, this is just not how it works. This is not how my mind works.
Don.
Yeah, no.
Just stock to flow, spot ETF, it's all coming.
Yeah, like my targets never hit, and my stop losses almost never hit either. Like, that's just the thing, right? Like, I have a target, and it's usually too far out, and I have a stop loss, and I mean, usually I'm out way before the stop loss ever hits, right? Like, that's just best case, worst case scenario, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I see something, I manage to trade. Like, if I wasn't, then what's the point at even staring at the charts, right? Then I would just enter a trade, put a target and put a stop loss, and then just walk away.
Go into a coma.
Yeah, and then come back like 24 months later, because if you're really targeting 100K, I mean, this would be a multi-year trade, right? And then be back in 2 years and see if my target hit or not. Like, that's just not how I work. But fair play to everyone that does work like that. I would say that's more of an investor mindset than anything else, though.
Or bag holder mindset, alternatively.
Also, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap between those two categories. I wonder if there are any true crypto investors versus people who just traded really poorly and are now bag holders, or just realized they're sort of not particularly efficient on lower time frames and like, fuck it, I'm just gonna... Because you can find a lot of big picture bullish arguments, right? Like if you really zoom out and you go down the rabbit hole of... I mean, they're not all productive rabbit holes, but like, stock to flow, which is obviously a meme. But then you look at like gold market cap and like spot ETF, which is slightly in the middle, You can find decently compelling reasons if you're psychologically primed enough to hold for big numbers. But then that's like an investing/coping show and not a trading one. So if anything, I think people would appreciate in general like a dynamic assessment of the market and people changing their mind and pricing in new information, that type of stuff. That just seems more interesting for short-term speculation. So
yeah, I think people just want to put other people into these kind of groups, right? Like there's this bearish group, and if you're bad, like you can feel at home there, and then there's this bullish group that always just talk about bullish stuff. And
it's really America versus Europe, isn't it, Don? It feels like it nowadays.
It does. On Twitter, most definitely. But I think it's kind of like this group thing where you just want to like belong to your group. So like when I talk bullish, I attract like newer people that haven't been following me as closely, and like, oh shit, he's in my group. Like I'm gonna cheer for this guy. And then if I turn bearish, they're like very upset, even though like even price went up, whatever, they don't care. It's just like, fuck this guy. Like
it's about the identity, right?
Yeah. He's kind of like shit talking my group now, and it's like if you're a trader and you think like that, it's the worst thing in the world. I think like I've had people be upset at me for being bearish as a trader. And I don't get it. Like I literally trade this for a living. I'm not here to cheerlead Bitcoin on to go to 1 million, and I'm not here to doom Bitcoin to zero. Neither would make me would make me happier. Like I don't care.
You are here to doom altcoins to zero, though.
Oh yes.
We'll discuss. So as per the name, people thought DonAlt. Oh, he must love altcoins. Like nope, I've got bad news for you. Weekly time frame though. So this is one of the... I guess the recent developments are more or less visible on the weekly. I think the weekly and the daily make the case quite interesting as far as the one green candle we have. But basically, we had 4 weeks of lows built up around the local range low that we've been trading around at 26K. And then we traded below them, which could have been a breakdown, could have been a fake out. You always have to wait to some extent on one time frame or another to figure that out. But the way the weekly is shaping up at the moment, it looks like we're going to close back above 26K, and having spiked, 4 weeks of lows, close above there as well. So that's not the worst thing in the world, kind of a failed breakdown at an extremity. I do wonder though, because this is like someone asked in like via DM or another chat or whatever, what are some of the main differences between you and Don? But the initial one I brought up was he's good at trading and I'm not. But then in terms of more practical stuff, I was like, he has a really good sense of when to ignore resistance levels, if that makes sense. So when you and I used to discuss sort of markets in the past and stuff outside of this show, I'd always be like, oh, but what do you think of this level? And, essentially your premise would be that because the reversal or the setup that has taken place is so good, it'll most likely break the resistance above it or break the support below it. So you end up in effect being like holding your long into resistance or holding your short into support on the anticipation of it breaking. And so that's where a lot of, I guess, a big stylistic difference is from like a trading point of view. So I'm wondering, if this 26K reclaim, this weekly spike, whatever plays out, in the past, you and I have discussed both sides of the cluster at sort of 26.7 to 28K. We had it as a weekly box. I'm wondering if this weekly is decent. Are you in a position where you'll basically ignore that cluster, or are market conditions not allowing you to be as ambitious? Because if you ignore it, then the argument I think automatically becomes, look, we're at the range low now, and if you fail to break one side, you go towards the other side. And I think towards the other side is like, what, 30K, 29K, roughly around there. So I'm wondering, do you have any faith, conviction in the intermediate resistance level, or even if from a purely TA point of view, if you have 30K-ish as your range high going back to April on the weekly, and then June as your range low, going back to 26K, you get a midpoint at 28-ish, which is the top of that same cluster. So all of that is a roundabout way to say, do you care about the middle? Are you going to diddle in the middle, or is this like a weekly failed breakdown, send it as high as it wants to go?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tough one because I actually don't have too much conviction in my trade. It's rare for me that I'm like, okay, this could go either way, but I'm still in the position. I just like the risk to reward here, basically. That's why I bought a little bit lower. But yeah, we're running into that resistance, into that cluster. The reason why I'm not too worried about it is because we basically ran through that whole cluster before, right? Like 2 weeks ago, and we had that massive wick into resistance. And I think we should have broken down there, right? Like basically you had a massive bearish retest, you had a bunch of people on the wrong side. Would have been perfect conditions to break down. It didn't break down. And that makes me kind of distrust this resistance. But yeah, I'll basically wait and see how we trade into that resistance. And then I'll make keep my trade or not. In general, like there's a good chance that any day I will basically close this because, like I said, I don't have the strongest conviction in the world. So it's an odd one because my mind could change by tomorrow.
You must have been bored if you're taking like low to medium conviction punts on the weekly.
Yeah, bored is yeah, I'm a little bit bored, yes, but also I just thought like basically the setup as it was showing up, and I mean this is when we go to lower time frames, you'll see it better. But basically, I had there was a trade to be taken where you have basically like a $500 invalidation and a target that is, I mean, if we go up and if we break that resistance that we're kind of battling with right now, a target I think that could be like 36K ish.
Ooh, the monthly resistance.
Yeah. So basically, if this goes, and we have enough good reasons to go, right? We have enough reasons to go down too, but like if sentiment shifts, I think we have enough reasons to go up. So basically, I was like, there's a chance that I'm not going to get a good entry at 30K. Because if this rockets, it'll rocket maybe too fast for me to catch a good trade. So I'll just take a shitty trade down here just to make sure. And worst case scenario, I just take a tiny hit because the invalidation is so tight. And then I can rebuy 19 to 20K. So that was kind of my reasoning for the trade. That said, the longer this takes to move up, the more bearish I become again.
Yeah, I was going to say, Don, you already mentioned 36K, like 30 seconds ago. If, God forbid, you close your trade before 36K, your mentions are not going to be a fun place to browse.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I want to see how this trades in the next few days. I give this, like, at most a week or two, this trade. Like, I'm not going to sit in this trade for more than probably like a week if we're still stuck below this weekly resistance.
Okay.
As in, like, if we don't move in the next 4, 5, 6 days above kind of 28K-ish, there's a really, really high chance that I'm going to be out of the trade. And there's, in general, a pretty high chance that I'm going to close at any point. Like, this is not one of the ones where I'm like, okay, super high conviction, copy trade me, whatever. I mean, I never say that, but this one is just like basically just to make sure that I'm not completely caught with my pants down if it rallies. Not high conviction, and in general, like not the cleanest setup, but it's this decent like risk to reward. So that's what I think.
You mentioned the lower time frames in terms of identifying the failed breakdown, or just in general as the basis for the initial positioning. Was that on the daily?
Yeah, daily and 4 hour basically.
Daily and 4 hour. Okay.
So basically, like,
did you buy? I guess sorry, just very quickly, was as a technical question. Did you buy the breakdown itself, or did you wait for a low time frame reclaim of the breakdown?
No. I bought, like, basically I saw the breakdown and I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I was like 90% certain it was bullshit, but I was still in this like very complacent state of mind where it was like I really shouldn't be trading because this market is shit. But I was like, I'm pretty sure this is bullshit. The S&P didn't move. Bitcoin moved on its own. There was really no good reason for it to break down, and it was a shallow move in general. So I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is bullshit. And then while I was trading basically at the lows, I was like, okay, I just want to see a little bit of a hint that it is actually bullshit, because the market is so shit, and maybe I'm just bored, right? Maybe I'm just
Mhm.
seeing things because I'm so bored because there's been nothing really going on. And then the moment we started going up, like at 25.1, 25.2, like when we pushed into that kind of like area, I was like, okay, there might be more to it. And then it started going up aggressively, and I just bought back into that aggression, basically.
Okay.
Not the best average, but good enough. And I was like, okay, basically, if you go back below, and this is something that you'll see best on the 4 hour, if you go back below 25K, or like even close to it, I think at this point, now that we've rallied a little bit, like even if you're going back to 25.2 or 25.3, like that area, we really shouldn't go back
Just where the
to.
wicks are, basically, right?
Yeah, I think in general, we shouldn't necessarily go below the consolidation we had before the breakdown.
Yeah, I've got that as like 25.6-ish, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, if we start closing below that, I'll probably be out too. But if we wick below it, it's okay. I don't mind too much. But that's basically where my head's at.
Okay.
Like you don't want to be losing that. That'd be bad news. And so as you can see, like the invalidation was pretty tight.
For sure.
And that's okay by me. Then sometimes when I have really good invalidation, I take shitty trades, and I would say this is not the greatest. And I still think the interesting trade is above 30 or like at 20 or 19K.
Right.
It's just basically a little bit of boredom, a little bit of okay, I haven't been trading in like whatever 3 months, I think it's been now. Maybe I want to get my feet a little bit wet, and it's not the biggest position either. So like
Okay.
I'm not as degen as I was the entire way up. Not even close.
Fair enough. No, all of that makes sense. The proximity to invalidation is always a good one, and that can in itself serve as a valid entry trigger as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, sometimes like I really don't want to be. I really don't want to buy, but I mean, this is just such an obvious invalidation that I'm just gonna take it because I mean, I might as well. Because that's really the hardest part about trading. I think like finding where you're wrong is the hardest part. So sometimes if you have like a really good one, you're just like, okay, I mean, the hardest part is done and it's very close. So fuck it, we try. And then sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't. But given that you don't lose too much on those kind of trades, but you do have to pick them really well. Obviously, like if you just pick random invalidations and then you get stopped out 10 times, that's not the way to trade. But this one, if you look back on the daily, it's a pretty obvious one. Given we had consolidation and then we had a breakdown candle, we closed below. Like you can draw a line at 25.7. Ish. That's on BitMEX prices. I think it's 25. Yeah, it's 25.7 on Binance too. And yeah, we closed below, came back above. I mean, that's a nice kind of fake breakdown candle, and a nice kind of invalidation there. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Is there anything on the daily now or before we push into the weekly cluster or even on the 4 hour that you're like, this is a bit troublesome, it's a trouble area, it's some sort of resistance that is worth paying attention to? Or is it give me weekly cluster or give me death?
I mean, basically what happened yesterday, like we pushed up and we almost hit 26.9/27K.
Yeah.
And that's where you have a cluster, basically the 18th of March cluster.
Oh, the good old daily boy. I forgot about him.
Yeah, and that wasn't really the best when we had this news push. But then again, like news pushes don't necessarily obey traditional TA most of the time, I would say. Like when you get a hype kind of event and people buy it, but the market's still shit like that, then oftentimes like you overshoot stuff that you shouldn't have, and then the resistance doesn't work as it should. And I think that's basically part of why that didn't really do anything. But now I think that's still resistance, and that's kind of where we got rejected yesterday. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where this down move today is coming from. And I really don't want to see that continue, right? Like I'm down with a red candle today, but I want to see green candles afterwards. Otherwise,
anything more is just bleed out PTSD.
Yes, and we've had a lot of that.
Yeah. That was the interesting thing about the last couple of days is that we had a green candle that didn't fully retrace like immediately after. It's sad that that's an achievement in the current state of the market, but it's also like useful signal, you know, like we had a green candle and it didn't totally go to shit. We also had like it's arguably some stale news about the FTX estate sort of liquidating assets, etc. And the market didn't go to shit. So at least it's something, right? I think we wrote about that in Technical Roundup as well. Where essentially made the argument that, look, the market still looks like crap, but bulls have a chance if they don't get retraced on, which isn't proper English, but whatever. If they don't get dunked on by the news, and if they don't bleed out the reclaim immediately, that's already progress compared to like the last 3 months. So they're doing okay so far, but I agree with you in terms of time at the very least. You kind of want this thing to move, otherwise it sort of just skews the odds towards the price action we've seen in the past. But interesting times nonetheless. And that daily cluster at 26.9 to 27.4-ish more or less overlaps with the weekly as well. At least the lower boundary and mid of the weekly. So there's stuff going on there. I think that's it for BTC, really, right? TLDR, failed breakdown. Some more positive reaction to news than in the past. You want to give it a chance to, break out, essentially, or get moving. But if it doesn't do so quickly or within a week, then you're out. And then there's resistance in sort of 27, 28 that, you'll have to manage actively. Do you think that's broadly fair?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if we get back, like that's the thing, right? Like I look at this and I see daily resistance and I see weekly resistance. So I know that there's going to be trouble here. But I also see that if we push through that, we actually have a much, much better looking chart, like all of a sudden. And that's why I'm not, like, this is why people get confused, right? So basically I'm saying, like, we have daily resistance here, we have weekly resistance here. If we break through those, we're probably going to go above 30K too. And then I'm like, okay, my target is 36 because this is much bigger of a battle. Like this 27K area is much bigger of a battle than 30K would be. And if we go above 30K, I'm expecting 36, right? So what you could be doing too, if you want to kind of like be a little bit more safe, is just wait for this to break above 28K, that weekly cluster. It's a little bit earlier of kind of like a breakout trade-ish. But that's kind of where I'm coming from. This is why my targets are so high, because I'm like, okay, if it goes higher here, then there's a good chance it just goes higher in general. Doesn't have to mean that I'm expecting like a giga moon or like I'm 100% certain just because my target is high. It just means like, okay, if it can actually do something, it probably does a lot. Don't know if that
makes sense. Look, after years of running this show and trying to translate your raw intuition into something palatable for the audience, the best version I can offer that makes sense to me, at least in terms of framing, is that you absolutely hate breakout trading. So you will do anything to avoid breakout trading. So a lot of your trades, as a result, you will take less than obvious and you'll take less clear trade setups if it means that if the market does break out, you can still have a position without having to breakout trade it.
Oh, yes. I fucking hate breakout. It's actually true. Right? I never thought about it this way.
Yeah. Here's your therapy session, Don, where this is where it all comes from. You hate breakout trading, so you will do anything necessary to avoid it, even if it means extrapolating 2-3 moves ahead and buying with resistance still overhead. It's like anything to avoid breakout trading.
Oh, so. Yeah, but I mean, if you breakout trade, you buy something that someone else got to buy cheaper. I mean,
how disgusting is that, right?
Yeah,
oh, God,
I mean, no.
You also don't use limit orders, because imagine letting another man fill you, right? You always use market orders.
No, you have to market.
Yeah, perfect. I think
Alpha with Don.
That's enough, I think.
And buy resistance.
Yeah, it's like the Sigma trader, right? Market buy resistance versus the limit order at support virgin type of thing. There's probably something to that. ETH, on the other hand, hasn't reclaimed shit yet.
Fuck ETH.
Fuck ETH. Okay, next. But yeah, it just looks worse, right?
It's the worst Bitcoin.
We've beat this drum to death. Not that drums are alive in the first place. We beat this drum-shaped horse to death because basically, in a technical sense, ETH has been weaker, so that's been no fun. And in a narrative and catalyst sense, it's primarily BTC oriented. So even if you have a risk appetite for the long side, it makes sense to express it more via BTC than via ETH. So you're left with a chart that's narratively less compelling and technically weaker, and that sucks. Now, you could extrapolate from that the idea that maybe you can express your bullish views via ETH BTC, if you wanted to be more conservative. But fuck it, we just trade the underlying and pair trades are for pussies, right? That's how it works. So
That is how it works.
That is how it works. So that's where that comes from. TA wise, I don't think there's anything new for ETH. It's this 1700 level on the weekly, or like 1680, whatever that highest close green candle. We're still on the underside of that. And on the daily, it's a bit messy, but more or less the same sort of range low area. Whether you zoom out to 1700 or even look at the most recent breakdown, that hasn't even reclaimed that yet. So, yeah. And even if it does, BTC's probably done much better as a result. Yada yada. ETH just unclear, I think, or at least less compelling.
I just look at ETH BTC weekly, and then it's pretty straightforward, really. Like that's as straightforward as a chart as you can.
That looks like it wants to break down.
Yeah, I mean, it's just walking down.
Listen, Don, you like buying breakdowns so much. Why did you buy this one?
I'd rather not. No thanks.
Fair enough.
No, the reason why I'm like such an ETH hater right now, and I do like ETH. It's actually been fun playing around with ETH over the last few years. Whereas with Bitcoin, you just put it in a box, right? So I like ETH. I'm not an ETH hater in general, but I look at this chart and I just see a downtrend ever since basically August of 2022. It's been making lower highs and lower lows, and it's actually been pretty clean on that. And until that changes, you will not see me buy ETH. And in general, I just don't see a good reason to be buying altcoins when you have the whole ETF thing. Like the only thing holding the market up right now, right? I think we'd be trading much, much lower if this wasn't the case, is the whole anticipation of the ETFs that might or might not be coming. And I think they will be coming. And that's why like Bitcoin is doing decently well, whereas I think it wouldn't otherwise. But if that's the case, right, like what's the ETH flow? Like where's the ETH flow coming from? Is that just people like trying to play 4D or 5D chess, being like, okay, Bitcoin might get an ETF and that's going to be bullish, and when Bitcoin goes up and then doubles, ETH is going to go up, but people are going to try to front run that, so they're going to buy ETH now because they know that Bitcoin is going to go up. Like how far in it? Like that's even far for me, right? Like I like to jump hoops and kind of go through like, okay, what if, but that seems kind of far-fetched to me. I don't get the point, right? Like I think it's pretty straightforward. If the ETF thing happens for Bitcoin, that's going to be bullish for Bitcoin, and then you're going to get an impulse on Bitcoin and probably some trouble in altcoin land on the ratios. They're probably going to go up against USD as well, but they're not going to go up as much, is my guessing, or is what I'm guessing. And then you can rotate all you want, right? Like let's say you get an ETF and Bitcoin rallies to 40K. I've rotated into ETH, fair, right? Like I totally get it. But at this point where we're kind of like hanging off a cliff, because Bitcoin is basically like, if this 25K area breaks, there's really nothing until 19 to 20K. So the downside is quite severe, right? And generally speaking, ratios like ETH BTC or altcoin Bitcoin, they don't do so well when the entire market is imploding, right? And then on the other side, usually you would think, okay, Bitcoin does well, altcoins are going to do well. But in this case, the bullish argument is very, very Bitcoin centric, and that's an ETF, and that's people buying Bitcoin, right? So like the bullish and the bearish case are not that great for altcoin ratios in my eyes anyway. Could be wrong on that. Don't really care, but it just doesn't make sense to me.
Don't really care. Okay, fuck the show then. You know, just, why bother?
No, but I mean, it's just like at the end of the day, like I could be wrong, right, and then I'm gonna buy into the altcoins if I need to. But I don't have much of an appetite for that right now. And if it goes sideways, right, like what we've been seeing is that altcoins have been bleeding out. Like all evidence suggests that we have very little retail in the market. Like there's volumes are shit. I can even see it on Twitter. Like the engagement has been very low in comparison to the past, and that is something. And I mean, I think I've been quite active on Twitter in the last few months, and I've kind of had a lucky streak going. So when you're doing well, people generally like engage more. So the fact is that like there's just less people, and people are buying altcoins and the few people that stay behind after everything is said and done, they generally don't buy as much altcoins, right? So you have altcoins have a much harder time, is what I'm saying, and with all of this kind of going on, I just really don't see the point. Like, I could be completely midwitting this, but I think the flows are bullish. Like, if there's going to be flows, there's going to be bullish for Bitcoin, not for altcoins. The altcoins will catch up, most likely. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. But that's for later down the line, and it's going to be quite obvious in my view. Because basically, if the ETF comes aligned, you're going to get retail flows again. But Bitcoin is going to profit from those first, because people are just going to be like, oh, Bitcoin ETF, let me jump into that, and then you're gonna see the altcoin flows improve, and then you can trade the altcoins. But right now, up or downside, I don't see the point.
I think everyone's just naturally itching to buy altcoins because they've been getting so wrecked. And the mental model is you essentially project current prices to some version of former all-time highs, and then look at those percentage returns and think, yo, holy shit, I'm accumulating, bros. And that's super common. But that's like a bad trade. And again, we've beat this drum-shaped horse to death in the past. But even if your old altcoin does well, because a rising tide lifts all boats. First of all, your really old alts doing super well is kind of a either really early cycle signal or an absolute Pico top froth signal where we've run out of stuff to pump at that point. But even then, even taking the old altcoins, on average, for the most part, even at their best, they will still, in subsequent cycles, underperform relative to BTC and ETH. And they will certainly underperform, almost certainly underperform, relative to the new shiny stuff without bag holders of that cycle. So from like a risk-adjusted returns point of view, it makes it really hard to justify trying to be early to these things. Like, even if you almost ignore the hardest part of getting the timing right, to not just getting bled on for 10 weeks in a row, however long it's been, even if you nail the timing, you still underperform kind of lower risk trades or quote-unquote easier trades. So that's tough. And in the current environment, I mean, we've seen what the altcoin trading landscape looks like at the moment, right? It's probably one of the worst I can remember, at least since my time in crypto. We've essentially given up. There's just a lot of supply hitting the market, both because altcoins are inflationary, as you love to remind us, but also just from sort of VCs, unlocks, liquidators, all this type of shit. There's the natural overhang plus other overhang or artificial overhang, if you want to call it that, even though it's very real. So that sucks. And then at the moment, there are no new inflows and no one coming in to lift these things either. So it just makes it really, really tricky. Every Monday markets or whatever, I click through my high cap watch list on the daily, on the weekly, to look at these things. And at least the stuff that's on my watch list, which as I mentioned is like mostly high cap stuff, it's been going down for like 10 weeks in a row, if not more in some cases. So like alts look shit. Even the on-chain stuff, those cycles were fairly short-lived. I'm sure there's always a new thing in town, but those have been getting ruggier and ruggier as well. But it's just not, I think, by any reasonable metric, not a good time for altcoins. The only trades that I've seen traders take around them have been sort of catalyst-based sell the news events. So it's not even like the bullish stuff that, they've just announced this and I'm going to buy and take a news trade. It's, dumping on, buy the rumor, sell the news, basically. Litecoin halving, OP, Doge, Sheeb, Stellar, all of that just has been dumping on the last 3 participants who buy news events, hoping that they'll turn out differently. So, but the Litecoin halving will kick in any moment now. So that's just around the corner, I'm sure.
Oh yes. No, I mean, just look at AVAX BTC.
Your favorite altcoin barometer.
I mean, I like to look at it just because I think it shows pretty much the down only market as well as.
Are we looking at Luna next by any chance, Don?
I mean, that's what happens if you buy the wrong one. But AVAX, like, you couldn't even say like, hey, I bought the wrong one, right? Like, because this is something I got into an argument today on Twitter about, basically, where people are like, oh yeah, if you buy quality altcoins, that's not going to happen to you, right? Like, I would say people would have said like 10, 12 months ago that AVAX was the most quality you'd get, right? Now people are like, oh yeah, no, you should have known that AVAX is shit, right? But the only thing that really changed is that price went down. Like, people will always be like, yeah, you should have bought this and that because that's much better. But it's all hindsight shit, right? Like, AVAX was one of the coins that was heralded as like the big future, basically. Now people don't say that anymore, but it's not because anything at AVAX changed, to my knowledge anyway. It's because prices went down. And this is something that kind of like people just tend to forget. Like the quality altcoins people talk about, it's literally just, did price go up or did price go down? You can have the biggest shitcoin on the planet. If price goes up, people are going to call it quality. And if price goes down, people are going to call it not quality. Right. So it's just this stupid thing where people kind of in hindsight say, yeah, because there's always going to be one or two coins during every bear market that are going to do well. Right. And they're going to be like, oh, yeah, these are quality coins. You should have bought those, because obviously if you're like someone that knows to pick quality, you would have picked those. But it's not the case. It's just like price doing something doesn't mean something is good or not. At least not in the altcoin world. In the general world, maybe, but in the altcoin world, it's just literally who holds it and what's the narrative behind it. So, like, that's kind of my point in all of this is, yeah, there's going to be outliers and there's going to be obviously coins that go up, but the vast majority, right? I'm not talking to that one person out of all of you guys out there that's picking the right altcoins every time, and it's like, oh yeah, but you should have known that this goes up. I'm talking to the 99.9% of the other ones that bought a shitcoin and that are losing their money on it. And yeah, I think it's just people just tend to lose sight of that. They're like, oh, I should have bought this, I should have bought that. No, you shouldn't have bought altcoins in the first place because it wasn't the time for altcoins. And I still think it isn't. But we'll see. We'll see when it comes around. Like, altcoins in general attract people because, like you said, and this is also something
I wish I was an altcoin. Sorry, go on.
And it's also something that triggers the shit out of me, where people, they're like, oh, this is down 99%. So if it goes back to all-time high, look at that juicy 100x, right? This is just not how it works. Like, good stuff generally doesn't go down that much. It's the bad stuff that goes down 99 or 99.9%. And if you're trying to buy that and get it back to all-time high, 99.999% of the time, you're going to have a bad time, right? It's not how it works. Like, your argument is, this is so shit, like, this is so weak, that I just gotta buy it. And that's, I think, the wrong way to look at it. That's not how I look at altcoins. I like to look at it and be like, okay, what didn't dump as much as the other ones? What's kind of been having like a little bit of underlying sell buy pressure, whereas everyone, like every other coin has been dumping. Those are the more interesting ones. If you want to buy weakness, be my guest. But most of the time, I don't think that works out.
Thing is, it's a bad habit as well to ingrain, because when the market's actually bullish, you want to be looking at the outlier strong stuff.
Yes.
Like the whole Sol Luna AVAX meme obviously sounds ridiculous now, but that was such a money printer because it would just consistently be the strongest like trio. I'm sure Axie you could throw in there, but there are always like 3 to 6 coins that for a fairly meaningful period of time just go down less than the others and go up more than the others. Less red on red days.
Too,
yeah, for sure. Like less red on red days, more green on green days, and that makes for a pretty easy trading system as a result. So then if you prime yourself when the market is shit to just buy stuff that's weak, then if the tides shift and it switches to a regime where you should be making kind of a disproportionately large part of your overall returns per cycle, and you're still in that same frame of mind of looking for laggards, looking for the catch-up plays, looking for the stuff that's most discounted at the cost of ignoring the stuff that's stronger, or even if you do both, the opportunity cost still screws you for money you're putting into the weaker stuff as opposed to the stronger stuff. It's a bad frame of mind, I think, to carry over to when you really should be stepping on the gas. So, but that brings up the whole bear market PTSD trading stuff, which we've beat to death also. Yeah. So
I think it's just basically people they cannot imagine something going up in general. Like, they see a new coin and like, where could this go? I have no idea, right? Like, because it's hard to guess where something could go. But if they then have like already a target on the chart, like this is like 99% down, so I know exactly where it used to be. So now, like, I know where it could go again. Then, like, oh, this is much easier to go there because it's already been there. But that's not the case. Like, the coin that doesn't have the history of a million backholders that are very happy to sell is more likely to do the 100x than the coin that is down 99%. It's just how it is, right? Like, it's a stupid mindset, and I think it's a lot of the YouTubers that I see on YouTube kind of ingrain this in people, like, oh, this is down so much. If it recovers this and that amount, you're gonna make so much money. But I think it's stupid. Like, it's completely stupid. The argument, when you really think about it, makes no sense whatsoever. Just be bold, right? Like, you buy a coin, you check how high is the market cap, and you like the coin, and the market is bullish, and you're like, okay, it would, if it to end up in the top 100 market cap list, whatever, it would have to do this and that, and then that's your target, right? Like, that's as simple as you can do it. It's better. Like, I'm not a big fan of it, but it's much better than just picking out the previous all-time high and being like, okay, it just needs to go back to the previous all-time high and I'm gonna be rich, because that's shit.
Yeah. Or alternatively, Don, fuck you. My bags are undervalued. They've been dragged down by fraud in a bearish market. So as soon as things turn around, because the community has no bag holders, I mean, they do because everyone's underwater, but we're so ideologically aligned that no one's going to sell on the way up and we're going to make new all-time highs.
Of course.
And it is my favorite feature though, Don, right? When you post this stuff, everyone's like, yeah, you're completely right. Except my bags, right? Those are different. It's like, yes, buddy, I'm sure out of the 10 trillion altcoins, you have indeed found the exception.
Yeah, the one. And yes. then they're like, I had some people with DOT, right? That were like in my comments being like, you have no idea what you're talking about. My coin was made by the founder of ETH. It's gonna go back up. And I'm like, dude, it's just like, I could be made by Satoshi himself. Like, with this kind of chart, I doubt it. But yeah, I don't know. People are just, they're always so militant about their coins. And I mean, I get it. If an investor, whatever. But why is an investor in my mentions as a trader? I don't get it.
But it's because you're a celebrity, Don.
Yeah, but maybe then I shouldn't be.
You're going to delete your account. That's clearly where this is going. Fine. I think, look, there's really, just for the audiences, for them to know, every Tuesday when we write Technical Roundup, we always feel guilty to some extent because we want to make it full and complete and include a bunch of stuff. But then we just look at altcoins and go through the exercise we've just gone through of looking at them on the weekly and the daily timeframes, given it's a weekly higher timeframe newsletter. And they just all look like shit. And we could certainly do almost the LARPy exercise of going on the 1 hour and marking out like a 3% range and going over all the different ways that you can not trade it. But we think that's a kind of futile exercise. And most of the time it's just noise anyway, and it just keeps bleeding for week 12. So that's why we're so sort of curt with altcoins. There is a residual feeling of guilt alongside it, that are we just being lazy pieces of shit and are we missing out on big opportunities? But for example, if I open up Velo today to get an overview of the high caps, so I've got large cap daily price changes. At the top is Litecoin with 2%, and at the bottom is ADA with minus 1.4%, and the rest around the median between like 1 or 2% either way in terms of price changes. So there's really not much going on. That's kind of a daily view. And then if you go to, again, as mentioned, like on the weekly time frame, these things have been going down for like 8-12 weeks in a row. And shilling altcoin shorts and stuff just doesn't seem awfully productive for a show like this. And then if you go to the mid caps and low caps, or even not even the mid caps at this point, you have to go to the low caps to find stuff that's actually moving in the altcoin world on centralized exchanges. And even there, that's not like normal trading. It's just kind of max negative funding manipulation cycles. And manipulation isn't a word I use lightly when talking about trading. There are people who will see price wick above something and go down and call that manipulation, which I think is like maybe a bit too broad in terms of using that term. But realistically, a lot of these, the phenomenon we've seen over the last few weeks now is, a sophisticated market actor will find the shittiest altcoin they can find that's listed that has perps on usually Binance. The spot market will get cornered in terms of supply often, or at least not infrequently. They will directly go to the team, which is quite distressed in these market conditions, and buy tokens for a very discounted rate from them and just kind of hoover up the supply that way in through secondary markets or whatever, and then just start pumping the spot and lift a bit on the perp. But because the spot supply is the one that's been cornered, it goes up a lot more than the perp. And so as a result of that dislocation of the perps trading significantly below the index, funding becomes super negative. And that just fuels further speculation that, oh, look, lol, everyone's short, there's going to be a massive short squeeze, which is incorrect. because the funding negative is from spot going up, not from perps being aggressive. But it basically baits a large contingent of the 5 traders that are left into taking the long side, expecting that funding to converge with perps catching up. And instead, as they're chasing the trade, eventually just the way it converges is not via spot catching up, the perp rather catching up to spot, but spot just gets mega dumped after the pump, and there are just more people to dump on now. And sometimes you can get short, those participants short the perp as well at the top while dumping their spot. So it's like a super cynical, like manipulative, maxed funding rate nonsense strategy that can only work in these outlier, low volatility, miserable market conditions. And really, in terms of centralized exchange trading, that is the only game in town. That plus the odd catalyst trade, which is mostly sell the news. Apart from that, this stuff is just bleeding, and so that's why we kind of don't talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was different, right?
Right.
And people are going to say, yeah, but what about my coin? It's an outlier. It's been going up, but I also don't want to talk about like whatever a coin that is 100, like place 150 on coin market cap or whatever, like a low cap, whatever, and then talk about it and chill it inadvertently by just talking about it. And who knows why the fuck it's going up in the first place, right? Like, it's not something that we are trading, so why the fuck would we be talking about it? Like, I don't like to kind of talk about anything really below top 50 market cap, because I feel like maybe me talking about it has an impact on it, and I'd rather not, right? And I couldn't even, with a clear conscience, be talking about these things and trade them myself, because then I'd feel like, okay, I'm talking about, like, I take a trade, then there's a little bit more volume on this coin, and then I shill it on, or like talk about it on a show or on Twitter, and then people are gonna copy trade it, and at the end of the day, it's like it's a PvP market, so I'm gonna dump, and whoever kind of listened to me last is gonna take the hit. Like, that's just not really something that I or you are into. So
I don't know, Don. Sounds like a bit of a skill issue. My alt account is an advisor to over 50 shit coins. You should see the amount of money I've made. It's been refreshing. I'll say that much. But yeah, that part of Twitter drama, etc. We'll try to keep the show clean of it somewhat. If you want to, I mean, go on Don's feed. He's been having a jolly old time reasserting his independence as a duck on the internet. But we managed to dodge the rollbit drama and not have it creep into Casual Friday, and I think we'll do the same with the recent happenings. We'll call them that. So enough about altcoins, I think. I look forward to when stuff changes. If I were cynical and we were just on a call, the two of us, for whatever reason, and we were discussing this, I'd probably say something like, look, it's very convenient. Like, when the market's shit, I'm like, oh, well, altcoins look garbage, so I'm not going to touch them or trade them. And then when altcoins are going up, I'll look at them on the monthly and say, oh, I can't buy this. That's way too far away from support, and ignore it all the same. So in reality, just never fucking trade altcoins and stay poor. But hey ho, I've improved on that. To be clear, just as a very quick tangent, if you're a high time frame oriented trader and the market starts trending really hard, you can apply most of your skill set regardless of that kind of high time frame trend. You just have to lower your time frames very significantly, sometimes beyond or below rather what you'd be comfortable with. So normally if you look at like the monthly, weekly, daily, and then 4 hour for execution, and you're looking at those time frames and it's just mega green candles and you have no idea what's going on, you almost certainly will have to go to the 1 hour, 15 minute, even 5 minute, and then you actually get some ranges, some data, some clusters, some bloody candlesticks to work with, and then your approach becomes feasible once again. But when you get crypto native lockout altcoin trends, you simply can't engage with them based on like your monthly, weekly, daily levels, because by the time the market retests those and they're reached, it's usually when the cycle's over, not mid-cycle. So I guess TLDR on that one is lower your time frames. And that only took me a whole cycle to learn. So, maybe save someone some time that way. Do you want to do some news, Don? Or do you disagree with that?
No, I agree.
Before. Okay. Excellent.
No.
Let's do some news. I've opened it properly. Can you believe it? I've held down control and clicked on it. So the tech progression is
the only
amazing.
pleasure I get every week is seeing those people in the comments freaking out about it.
Well, it's usually the volume people are my favorite ones.
Oh, yeah. But those I'm just pretty certain are trolls now.
We're just getting gaslit. All of it, it's like a full sensory attack.
Dude, there's a Telegram chat out there where like 200 people are sitting in and like, oh, how are we gonna get them this week?
Technical roundup, mental DDoS or psyop, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's working. It's very effective.
It's the market makers, dude. They're paying them. I can smell it from here.
For exposing their negative funding cycle rate actions.
Oh shit.
The first article, Don, is about your favorite platform to extract 10 ETH. It's called FriendTech. And the headline goes, FriendTech's daily earnings exceed Ethereum, top key hits 40% of BAYC floor. So we talked, I don't know if we've talked about this on Casual Friday, but FriendTech is a thing. It's kind of a social media platform, but not really. You get to buy keys of your people who link their Twitter accounts, and those keys give you access to their chats, and it's just you and the creator, so you can't see what other people are posting in that room, but the creator can, and they can reply to stuff to kind of give you visibility of what people are posting. But it's essentially, at one point it kind of died down in terms of volumes. People thought the fad was over, but then it made a new all-time high in terms of TVL. There are very good reasons to be skeptical of TVL as like a useful metric, but just in general, in terms of TVL, volume, whatever metric you want to use, it looks like it kind of died and came back to life. And I think I've at least been surprised by how long it's stuck around for. So also it does make... It's not too surprising given the market is just complete garbage and there are like no altcoins to trade, and then a lot of the on-chain stuff even died. The activity tends to converge around whatever small pockets of volume and trading that you have. So a lot of people, and it's also fun, right? So yes. A lot of people are having fun with it as well. There's an additional piece of news that comes from Yield Bouncer on Twitter. And I think he was one of those aggregator accounts that built a website. I think he's building a competitor of some sort, but he also built like an aggregator website where you could basically see everyone's messages without being privy to their, without owning their keys. And then the person with whom he was working on that with, which was Salience XBT, apparently he lost all access to his chat rooms on FriendTech. According to this tweet. So FriendTech also now cracking down on aggregation, it seems. And as far as I know, some of the bigger accounts are acting as aggregators. So essentially, if you want the top 20, top 50, top 10, whatever, instead of having to buy all their keys individually, you kind of buy the key of an aggregator type account and get access to all of that type of stuff. As someone who I guess kind of uses FriendTech, or at least you've tweeted about it, any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns about the tech? Is it fun? Are you trading it? Are you just going to dump on everyone and ruin our lives? What do you think of this thing as a influencer power user?
Oh, I mean, am I going to dump on everyone and ruin their lives? Yes. No, I mean, at some point I'm going to sell, how I'm using it, right? And I'm kind of having fun with it so far anyway, is basically I'm just yield farming the points that you get. And while I'm doing that, I've just, I haven't even been trading. I've just been buying, basically. So I've been buying myself first. I bought myself because I was this is undervalued. And then I bought a bunch of other people where I was interested what they would post, basically. And that's basically how I've been using it. It's been fun. I've not been trading. I've just been buying people. So far, my portfolio is up 4x, I think, which is quite funny because I actually even I didn't really give a fuck about the prices of anyone. I'd just be buying. But so far so good. But I wouldn't really advise anyone to buy anything of that. I think it's basically a yield farming thing, and you have a little bit closer connection to your favorite content creator. That's how I've been using it anyway. I've been in Kobe's chat, and he basically just posts about his cats. And I mean, fair enough, right? I don't really mind. Especially given he's not on Twitter as much as he used to be.
So you've been using it to form parasocial relationships with
I
don't influencers.
The funny thing is I don't even post in anyone's. I'm just consuming. Right. I generally am more of a lurker than anything else. I'm just I want to have access to everyone, even if they don't give. I'm never gonna kind of like take anyone's trades and copy them. Like, it's not for me. Like, I don't care about what other people have or what other opinions are on the market, really. Like, no one's. Like,
Yeah, it makes the show very easy to do every Friday.
No, I mean, I do care, but I would never change my mind based on someone else, basically. Like, I do my own thing, trading wise, always have been. So like, it's not for the trades, and that's not what I think anyone should be using it. It's just more to hang out with people. If
do you think it's going to stick around? How are you framing it? Like, is this like an altcoin trade that's going to run out? Is it a yield farm? Do you expect it to bleed to zero? Are you waiting for like the airdrop to see if there's a token and then going to dump that? Do you have any like, I don't know, big picture views on direction?
So there's going to be an airdrop, and I think until then, or like until like 2 or 3 weeks before the airdrop comes, it's going to be an interesting spot to be in general. Afterwards, we'll just have to see, right? For me right now, I put a little bit of ETH in, and it's been multiplying, and that's basically all I've been doing. Kind of like, okay, worst comes to worst, everything goes to zero, but it's not that much anyway. It's like an on-chain play, if anything, but an on-chain play that isn't like Obama Sonic Inu, but like something that people actually use. The security question is a big one in this one, right? Like, later down the line, stuff is probably going to go to zero, just because, I mean, they literally called it shares at the start, right? Like, the rooms or like the people that you would buy would be shares and stuff. Like, that just seems a little bit odd.
But it's fine. They changed it, so it's like it never happened, Don.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works. but like, that's the thing, right? Like, I generally assume that it's gonna go to zero, but until then, I'm gonna have some fun, and I think the airdrop is basically gonna get my initial out anyway, and then with the rest, like, if my portfolio should grow to a size where I'm like, okay, this is enough, where I'd be like, okay, this is significant money, then I'll probably sell, just based on that, just having fun until it's like a lot of ETH, and if it's never reaching that point, it never reaches that point. That's kind of how I look at it. But I generally, I don't want to get people to buy it, because like, I don't care. Like, you shouldn't be buying me. I don't give any extra alpha in there. I just post from time to time, like, people ask me something and I answer, but nothing special, nothing that I wouldn't answer on this show either. So like, I don't know why people buy me on there, but if people want to, whatever, might as well.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think it has a chance to keep a decent amount of attention if the market stays this dead and there's enough anticipation of the points turning into airdrops, turning into tokens or something of that nature. I'm just generally not a fan of two things. One is social media-esque competitors tend to bleed and trend towards zero. And then it's also tricky to, I guess, three things. The second is it's just tricky to keep people engaged and to keep attention on this type of stuff in general. Especially if, they've primarily curated their audience on Twitter or elsewhere. It's hard to get someone to migrate fully. There are other concerns like the pricing and the bonding curve stuff, etc. But I guess the third one is that there are a lot of key buying takes place on the premise of influencer promises. That, oh, I'm going to do this for my key holders, and you get airdropped, and I'm going to answer all your questions and charts and FAQ, Q&A, whatever type of things. And I don't know what the longevity of that looks like. I think it's really good if you just want to pump your key price to promise a bunch of utility. But then, is the platform going to be around long enough, and is it going to be worth your time for you to just dilute your content even further and pump out stuff there? Like, a lot of it is based on promises, right? Which I guess is a lot of investment speculation stuff, but it's the promise of an airdrop, the promise of a token, the promise of the points meaning something, the promise that the influencer is going to keep using the platform and offer all the utility that they've said they would, etc. So it's pretty tangential.
Yes.
I think of it in general as like an altcoin trade, if that makes sense. And there are sort of sub trades that you can take within it on specific influencers or small accounts and gems, etc. That's probably 90 to 95% of it. If you think the platform has a future and you think those whatever people you follow are going to get even more popular, you're just trying to be early to that. And then maybe 5 to 10% is genuinely trying to get access to someone's chat because they feel more comfortable sharing alpha or trades or short-term stuff that they wouldn't with a bigger audience. If you wanted a max cynical take, it's just like a lot of people who wanted paid groups but didn't want the social stigma attached to them via Twitter are just using this basically. So
Yes.
that's also something to bear in mind.
Yeah, I think in general, everyone that gives promises, what they're gonna do, on the in their room or whatever, like, oh, I'm gonna give you signals. That's a little bit cringe, but fair enough. I actually like this better. Like, if people want to run this like a paid group, and that kind of sounds like a paid group to me, when people are like, oh, I'm gonna give you signals and blah blah blah, because people can buy in and then just be like, hey, this is shit, and then sell out again, right? Like, that's better than the paid group thing where you pay and then you're just kind of stuck with it. But yeah, I like, in general, like, it's an interesting thing and it's fun right now, right? And anything that's fun in crypto usually sticks around for a while, and until it's like boring for me. And this is kind of the best way, I think, to, like, if you're trading on there, and I know quite a bunch of people are, like, that's how I look at it. Like, the moment I get bored of it, it's probably a good moment to sell, right? Because if you get bored, depending on obviously what kind of person you are, like, if you're someone that gets bored very late, then maybe not. But like, for me, I get bored pretty quickly, and right now I'm not bored of it yet. So I think it still has, like, it could still do well, at least for a while. But if it gets boring for me, I think that's probably gonna be boring for a lot of other people too very soon, and then it's not as interesting. And then if a social media platform becomes boring, it's probably just going to die out. So we'll see how that goes. I think it's pretty genius with the way it's structured, as in, like, you have you can do a bunch, and then you also get rewarded, and you can see it in the app, that, like, the points you get every Friday. Like, that's pretty well done, because it basically, at the start of something, people don't want to use it, right? People want to use it once there's more people, basically as like a group thing, right? As a bunch of people moved over, so let me move over too. But with this system, you get the start done quite nicely, because people always want free shit. And then once that free shit ends, maybe they want to stick around, maybe not. So it's like, I think it's well done in that regard. And yeah, I think if you just take it as a thing, like, where you can hang out with people that you like,
For
without
money.
getting any signals, yeah, for money. But you can, like, then it's something cool. And if it involves, like, if it starts going down the route of everyone just, like, giving signals in their rooms, I think that it dies out pretty quick. But if it goes into a more personal thing, where people just post personal stuff, because you cannot, like, post personal stuff on Twitter without having, like, a million trolls answering to it. But you can be quite personal in, like, smaller rooms. So if that's the kind of thing that they're gonna go for, then cool. I think it could stick around. If not, like, it's a tight balance, and it's probably, like, if they don't, like, if they miss one step, I think it's gonna go to zero. If they hit it nicely, I think it could stay around long term. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. So yeah, I'm along for the ride. I'm having fun.
Yeah. I think this is a good example. You know, when we spoke about in the past, like, oh, if you had a small account, where would you go? And we said you go to the arenas where
Yes.
the super large, where your small size is like an edge, not something that's holding you back, right?
Oh yeah.
This is like a really good example of that, and we've seen a lot of really small portfolios just like run it up from just being nimble
Early
and
on this
sharp
one,
with
yeah.
it. Yeah, exactly.
And you could tell, right? Like, I knew, like, I saw it, I was like, oh, this is quite cool. And I was pretty sure that there was gonna be, like, an economy there for, like, quite a bit, especially at the start. Like, one trade I did was, I bought Arthur, pretty big Twitter account, fund manager, whatever, right? For like 0.15 ETH or 0.2 or something. And he's trading on there right now for 2.5,
Nice.
2.4. And, like, those kind of trades, like, this is whatever to me, right? Like, I'm like, okay, it's a 10x, but I did it with 0.2 ETH. But if you're starting out, like, that's a massive leg up, right? Like, to get a 10x on a Bitcoin trade, you either have to go completely stupid leverage, or you have to do something dumb, right? So that's, like you said, I think that's kind of like what you have to look for. And those opportunities come around every now and then. They usually come around for smaller sizes, because it's just not something like, if I bought him, like if I bought 20 shares of him, like that's just stupid. He's gonna fucking hate me if I dump. So it's just not how it works, right? But like you can buy one and sell it later. Obviously now it's a little bit late for that. It's already a little bit of an older platform, but this is exactly what I think you should be looking out for. Yeah, like you said, I think you can find quite a bit of edge in being to these kind of things early, because what you saw on Twitter, it's a little bit less now, but what you saw on Twitter was people like, oh, it's the next influencer scam, whatever. And fair enough, I'm down to title it that too if you want to. Like, I'm not gonna be the one that opposes it, but also like just installing the thing and looking at it doesn't cost you anything, and then you would have pretty early figured out that that's fun. And if you find anything in crypto that's fun, it's gonna make you money if you find it early enough. And but people went the route of, okay, it's just like, oh, fuck this, I don't want to be any part of this. And I think you can have that attitude when you have a bigger portfolio. If you have a smaller portfolio, you need to stay curious and try things out, because that's the best you can do for yourself at the start.
Yeah, I think
doesn't
all that's
mean
good.
And I think, like, I very much don't mean that you should be getting on FriendTech now and buying stuff, because now it's 10x more expensive than it was at the start, if not more. I'm just saying, like, if something like this comes around again and you want to jump on the hate bandwagon the moment it gets out, maybe you could also just be like, hey, let me try this out, especially if it doesn't cost you anything. If they want something up front, probably not, right? But if it doesn't cost you anything, why the fuck not try it out, see how it works, see what's there. That's kind of my opinion on this whole.
Yeah, it's just like trying stuff gets you a big leg up in general. Like, you know, the whole airdrop meta, yield farming meta, all of this stuff just rewarded users and tinkerers and people experimenting. So
yeah,
why not?
Especially people that are very good at like programming and stuff, right? Like the
Yes.
FriendTech stuff, it's a new ecosystem, right? And pretty much 2 or 3 days after it launched, there were people making bots buying up like accounts that they like, or that are bigger or whatever. And those people made several, like I think they're up in the millions now, right? Just like from nothing, like investing nothing. They could have put like 5 ETH on the platform and they would have turned it into like 500 or like whatever. Like we've seen massive volumes on this, and it's just one person being decent at what they do, as in programming, kind of using the blockchain as intended, basically, and made a bunch of money, like basically risk-free. And if you're so inclined and if you're kind of good at this kind of stuff, that's where the edge is, I think, and that's where you can make a lot of risk, like somewhat risk-free money. There's always a little bit of risk involved, but not too much. And but yeah, I think people focus too much on the normal trading part, especially when their portfolio is smaller, rather than these kind of opportunities that they can pick up from time to time, like once or twice a year.
Yeah, I think all that is fair. I have no alpha in the first place, so I don't post any of that there. I also haven't tweeted about my key because I don't want, like, I'm not going to promise anything. But I post my workouts in there, so that's been fun for me, you know? Like,
yeah.
That's
I mean,
something.
but like you cannot post your workouts on Twitter, right? Like that's
exactly. Just some ad hoc small shit is just much more, is better suited for FriendTech than Twitter. But
yes.
Yeah, short cred, short DonAlt. You heard it here first.
You should.
Binance US legal executive, chief risk officer leave the exchange, according to the Wall Street Journal. So I'm in two minds about this. So on the one hand, obviously you want to go down the route of, oh, where there's smoke, where there's fire type of thing, right? And then also make the argument that there's this whole sealed probe redacted thing from the SEC, and how it's just, you know, endless rumor mill news swirl around Binance, which is going to end in some big crescendo. But on the other hand, I thought, look, Binance US is basically dead, right? Like, what would these people stick around for? There's no point really in them. I mean, they're going to most likely close up shop. I'd be very surprised if Binance US just kind of stays. It looks like they're on their way out, so it makes sense to lose executives. The best counter argument I think I can think of to that is that the executives have been leaving, admittedly at a slower rate, but from international as well as US. So I sort of go back and forth on this point. I even had a DM earlier asking, what would you do if you thought like Binance was going to go under? Would you like buy the dip or whatever? Or would you short? I was like, no, I just wouldn't have any money in crypto whatsoever. I want like cash in a bank account or something. I guess to circle back to the question portion, how are you viewing this Binance news flow? BNB is still holding up-ish, I think, right? It hasn't broken anything too scary, still around sort of 210, 220-ish. The headlines keep coming, but the market's kind of more ambivalent towards them now. I think there's been a degree of saturation where at this point they're like, okay, well, if it's really bad, just tear off the Band-Aid already. The rumors and the news aren't going to be enough to have like a significant price impact. I think on one of the shows you said you wouldn't keep money on Binance and just you didn't want money in crypto in general, but now you're trading it, so presumably you have some risk appetite, even if it's not a big position. Yes. So, I mean, all of that again to say, what the fuck do you think about all of this? Binance, systemic risk. Are you scared for FUD?
I think a lot of the criticism and a lot of the FUD that Binance has been getting hit by is actually very legitimate. And I'm a little bit worried that they're going to get in quite big trouble. I don't like where my mind is at. Like, I don't think they're gonna implode like FTX did. Like, that would be a surprise. Wouldn't be the first surprise in crypto like that. Wouldn't be the last one either. But it'd be surprising to me. So that's not my going rate. And I agree with you. Like, if I expected that to happen, like if I think, okay, Bitcoin is just Bitcoin. Binance is just gonna go belly up. I'll probably just not have any money and probably not touch crypto as a whole for a long time, right? So that's kind of like, if you think that's the case, better not be exposed. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I'm staying clear of Binance, right? I don't have any money on Binance. I don't plan to return to trade on Binance. It'd be hard if I was trading like all the altcoins there, but I'm not, right? So like, I'm trading mainly spot Bitcoin, sometimes ETH. That's pretty easy to get elsewhere, so I don't have to go to Binance, which is quite nice. I think, like I said, I think the chances that they get hit by a pretty big fine is quite high. The chances that Binance US goes completely away is like almost guaranteed in my head. So I think in general they're gonna be in trouble. I think they're probably gonna get through it, and it's gonna be like a BitMEX thing. If you remember back, BitMEX used to be like the biggest exchange. It's not anymore, and I think if the rumors are true and all of the shit that's been coming out is actually to be believed, whatever, then I think it's gonna be a BitMEX situation where they have to pay a shitload and then people just don't come back. But we'll see. I don't have a strong horse in the race. I just avoid the place is basically what I'm doing.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable. I just think at this point the market is like immune to rumors about Binance, and it's going to have to be something pretty big and material to have price impact. Yes. Probably squeezed all the water from the rumor rock that's available at this stage. Speaking of winding up, Genesis no longer offering trading services through any business units, according to a memo. So goodbye, Genesis, I guess. They said the decision was made voluntarily and for business reasons. Okay, is all I have to say to that. It's funny because a lot of these bedrocks of 2021 and just even crypto before that, like the big players, they're just completely fucking wrecked and gone.
Oh, yeah.
Like Genesis was the OTC desk, right? And now they're stopping and they're gone. They obviously lent a lot of money to 3AC, if I remember correctly. I think they were also involved. They're the counterparty to the whole Genesis Earn thing, right? Gemini Earn, rather. So Gemini customers to get yield were doing it through Genesis, and then Genesis, did Genesis things. And so now the Gemini Earn customers are out of luck and out of money as well. So, I mean, this isn't terribly surprising. They got completely hosed. But yeah, just more big pieces falling. So there'll be a time, Don. Certainly next time around when we bring up names like Luna, Genesis, FTX, 3AC, BlockFi, Celsius, etc. This new generation won't know what we're talking about. And you know what? Maybe that's for the better. Because let's be real, nobody learns the lessons from the past anyway. So you might as well be white-pilled and start with a fresh slate than carry over the cynicism of days past in the bull market.
Yeah.
I think in general, like in terms of old accounts and old wisdom, take that for what it's worth. I think a good way to do it is that you want to follow the so-called OGs, and that's a very trite term, and I don't want to even get into defining it. But you want to follow that group of people, however defined, for like BTC, ETH, big picture, cyclical stuff, risk management, etc. But when it comes to the news cycle itself, you want to find the people like on the ground grinding and experimenting the most. Because a ton of the old guard OG people just did shit through DeFi summer, fumbled NFTs, a lot of that type of stuff. Just
can you stop shit talking me?
I mean, this applies to me too, right? And it applies to a lot of our colleagues from 2017 because we carried over.
I actually fully agree.
Our complacency and our trading PTSD into 2021, and we're just kind of more risk averse, less experimental. That doesn't mean we're completely useless. I still think, again, for big picture stuff, macro stuff, risk management stuff, just cyclical lessons, those older, more tenured accounts are useful. But if you want to make the most of the cycle-specific features that crop up where probably most of the money is made, I wouldn't look to the OGs for that because they're likely to be too... much more likely to be just like biased, complacent, risk averse, all the stuff I mentioned. And you want to find the people with like the smaller accounts, 5, 10, 15, 20K, who are grinding whatever the meta is at the time. I think that's a good way to do it. You don't kind of discard one or the other or put all your eggs in one basket, but you try to kind of synthesize the whatever collective wisdom is available from different time frames. Do you think that makes sense?
It does. Just make sure to not get scammed by those accounts because they tend to often do that too.
I can't wait to scam. But yes, don't get scammed.
No, I mean like the newer accounts oftentimes. Like,
oh, sure.
They do well in like the meta that is around, but once it ends, they're like giving back everything, and then they do shady shit. I've seen it time and time again. So during the bull, you can trust, or like at least like work with them in a way, but gotta be careful in the bear with people that haven't been around for longer.
Yes,
my kind of advice. I've seen it a lot. It's been actually very, very discouraging, like on Twitter, because like sometimes I see people that do quite well, and I'm like, oh, like they deserve a shout out. They should have more followers. And then I check back like 6 months later, and the bear market is on the way, and I see them do the shadiest shit and basically just cleaning out their followers. I'm like, well, guess it didn't go so well after all. Like after some time in the bear market, people just give back and then turn to shady methods to make their money back, and it's a bit of a sad one.
Yeah, you never follow the new people for risk management at all.
Nope.
They don't have a clue. You kind of like have to hit and run strategy wise because those guys, it doesn't tend to go super well. But that's something you can only learn. So maybe next time around they'll be better. If they're still
best
around.
Case scenario is just like make up your own shit, right? Make up your own mind. Like you follow people, but you don't follow them. You just check what they write about, and then you research yourself, and then you do all of it on your own. And that includes us. I think you should just be listening, seeing or like hearing the information, and then going
liking the video, subscribing, and then doing
exactly, and then and then make up your own mind, right? Because I'm an idiot. I cannot speak for you. But like, you shouldn't be blindly following idiots. Just make up your own mind about stuff.
Especially if you like go all in on a single person's like cult of personality. That's how you lose all your money.
Oh yes.
But that doesn't have the best track record. So bear all of that in mind. Last couple, SEC goes after Stoner Cat's NFT show, known for Ashton Kutcher and Jane Fonda. This is just more SEC clownery, really. Because if you think about the biggest, most expensive, highest profile blowups, they did zero to protect investors from those, or didn't serve any useful function there. But when it comes to low-hanging fruit that would genuinely help investors, like allowing for a spot ETF so people don't have to use a futures ETF and get shafted by the rollover fees, and just stuff like that, they don't do it. So it's again classic sort of nonsense from the SEC, where after the fact we'll go after like the lowest hanging fruit NFT nonsense that doesn't really. I mean, sure, it harmed someone, but certainly doesn't help anyone. And in terms of the harm, it's orders of magnitude lower than the stuff that actually harmed people. But then when it comes to giving investors access to products that they want and that make sense and are cheaper and are better all around, we're going to drag our heels and make it a pain in the ass. And also we're going to like chase after exchanges that I think in good faith attempted to be compliant. But we're on this ideological crusade and we're going to make law via litigation, all this other nonsense. So yeah, if you got shafted by any number of things that fell apart in 2021, you're probably not taking much reprieve in, finally, Stoner Cat's NFT. I'm glad those guys got what's coming, probably not what that looks like.
It's kind of absurd that people like Zach and CoffeeZilla did 10 times more for people that got scammed.
Yes.
Than the whole SEC did, right? Like, it's completely absurd. They, quite frankly, they suck at what they do. Cannot kind of describe it any other way. Like, this is just stupid at this point. There were so many obvious, like the Luna thing, right? Like, we just said we're two idiots, right? And the Luna thing was pretty glaringly obvious to us that was not all right. The SEC should have seen that too, and it should have been stopped ages before it actually blew up. But no, like, they come in, like you said, afterwards and do like dumb shit afterwards that no one is helped by, right? Like, you can wait till a project is 0 and then go after the project, but I mean, what's the fucking point? Like, people are already fucked. Like, I don't understand how this is helping anyone. I don't understand how they're in general helping anyone with the shit they've been doing. But maybe I'm just too small brain, but I think it's something else.
Yeah.
So,
agreed there. So, final bit of news: CRV falls below 40 cents as tokens bought from founders sent temporarily to Binance.
Big surprise.
Yeah, big surprise. So again, there was a big curve. God, I didn't want to start talking about this because we maybe rightly got roasted for like butchering it last time. But basically, there were a lot of handshake backroom deals made to bail out the Curve founder, or one of them, because if he were to get liquidated, that would have a ripple effect through a decent chunk of the DeFi ecosystem because he was taking loans from a bunch of different protocols. I think that's accurate so far.
Yeah.
And so he got these bailouts OTC, and there's like a handshake agreement to of varying terms, but not to just go and sell it immediately, even though they'd probably hedge it immediately nonetheless. But now it looks like in tough times, Don, a handshake may not be worth all that much, and so a few of those addresses were moving the CRV to an exchange, and now the CRV price is, still barely holding on to 40 cents. But more temporarily having dipped below. But more DeFi backroom shenanigans. In its current form, the reason I put this news article here, I think if you're a crypto cynic, rather than going after like Tether and stuff like that, and Binance to some extent, all of that, fine, that's fun, I guess. But if you wanted to make a really robust argument for like crypto being like a net negative, I think you go after DeFi. Because it's so easy, just with the amount of hacks and money lost to exploits, and how much of that goes directly into like the North Korean missile program.
Yes.
It's so easy to make an argument for like DeFi, and then you can kind of package crypto under it if you're feeling particularly facetious about it. But you essentially say that it exists to like, at a certain point it offers lower rates than T-bills at a much higher risk, constantly gets exploited, only used for speculation, no real world asset, tangible kind of open loop setup yet. It's all kind of just like stablecoins, shitcoins that stay in the ecosystem. And even then, billions, hundreds of billions lost to exploits. Maybe that's an exaggeration. I have no idea. I lost track of the number a long time ago. And not only are those just exploits where people get shafted and lose money, but they directly fund our enemies and the most tyrannical regimes in the world. Like, if you really wanted to, you could make a pretty strong argument using those terms. So I don't want to go as far as, lol, DeFi is a failed experiment, whatever type of thing. It certainly has been in the past a useful conduit for like speculation and stuff. Maybe that's useless as well, but at least it's something, and it's at least we know that that's what crypto is for to a large extent. But for DeFi specifically, there's it seems to be an especially glaring gap between its promises and its achievements. So yeah, what do you think? Are you a DeFi bull, Don?
I would even go so far that it looks like it's failed. I wouldn't say it has failed, but I mean, I don't know how to describe it otherwise, right? With basically you have your money on there, you lose it. And like that's how it feels like.
Yeah,
right?
North Korea gets to fire more missiles.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you have to be a little bit realistic, right? And I think the people that understand DeFi the best are all in North Korea. Like it's just absolutely, it's just absolutely insane. It's completely ridiculous, and yeah, I mean, I'm surprised there's actually not been more press about this, especially politically, because that's quite a bit of ammo against crypto. And this, like, I'm surprised that's not been used yet, but I say yet because
I recommend no more news like this, Don. You know, for all the senators and legislators and policymakers listening to Casual Friday.
Oh yeah, all zero of them.
All zero of them. They want to give them too much ammo.
Yeah, but like I agree. That's the biggest kind of that's the biggest ammo you can have. Like it's just so easy. That's such an easy target. But yeah, we'll see.
We
See
make
how
it
that
really
turns
easy,
out.
don't we, Don? Like especially
Oh.
over the last couple of years. Like if you're a crypto hater, you're spoiled for choice as far as picking your arguments.
I mean, did you see the Shark Tank crypto version?
I'm not going to talk about it.
I mean, when you look at that video for like 10 minutes on repeat, that promo video, I think even the biggest Bitcoin holder, Maxi, that's been holding it for 20 years, even Satoshi Nakamoto, if you sat him in front of it for 10 minutes, he'd go and start selling his Bitcoin. I tell you, like, no, even if you're in Bitcoin and not crypto, you turn into a fiat maxi afterwards. So I mean, we're really trying here. We're really trying.
Yeah, we're doing a good job. So on that very cheery, positive note, any final thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, Don?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Great. Well, we're back, hopefully on a more reasonable schedule. Leave a like on this video if you're still here, and subscribe to the channel if somehow you haven't already. If you come back every Friday and you're still not subscribed, what are you doing? Do us a favor. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. It's a centralized trading exchange, so be sure not to keep any more funds there than you need for trading. If you do choose to sign up, please look into it first. There are a bunch of exchanges, and in general, as Don said, it's not a good time for exchanges given their revenues are down. So there's a whole risk management matrix for you to think about. But with that said, the worst shill ever. We're going to shut up. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week for the normal content schedule. Bye-bye.
Bye.